Hello friends. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back. It is March 8th. It's kind of windy. There's a saying here where I grew up in Pennsylvania. March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Meaning that March is a really windy month. Then we have April showers that bring Mayflowers, and then Mayflowers bring pilgrims. Today, we finally get to the part of my story where Jesus literally changes my life. So if you remember from the last episode, I had gone to work and I had poured out all of my sorrow and anger and bitterness to my coworker, who kindly listened and then asked me if I wanted to know how Jesus changed her life. And I said, yes, I would like to know how that happened. And she shared her own story of her life and what led to her becoming a believer and follower of Jesus. I can't remember the details. I just know that her story involved a lot of searching, the way my life involved a lot of searching, and it was compelling and made sense but didn't make sense. And I remember really wanting it to make sense, and I asked her straight up, how are you supposed to believe something that you don't understand? And that is when she said, well, the thing about faith is you have to believe it to understand it. Faith is not about being certain of something in the physical realm, like here's a fence. We can touch it. We know it's real. It exists because we can see it. We can put our hands on it. We can climb it. But that's not the same thing as faith in God. Faith in God. God is spirit, and He's wind, and the only physical proof of God came in the man, Jesus Christ. She didn't say all of this to me. This is me saying it now because I believe it. But to get back to her, she told me, and this I believe 100%, that if I wanted to know if God was real, all I had to do was call on His name and speak to Him and ask Him to show me that He was real. To just cry out to Him and ask for forgiveness, and then ask for Him to show me that He's real. I believed her, and I went home that night and I cried out to God, and I asked Him to forgive me for the mess that was my life. I asked Him to forgive me for telling Him to go away, all those years ago when my dad died. And I asked him to please show up and show me that he was real. And that was the night. That Thursday night was the night that something changed. I could feel it. I could feel it in my body that something changed. And when I went to work the next day, I was different. And I was not wishing I was dead anymore. And I was excited to see my friend and tell her that I had asked God to come to be in my life again, and that I believed he came back. And then immediately, I was different. At the time that I met the Lord, I was filled with so much anger and bitterness that everything that came out of my mouth was vitriol and swearing, and man, I used the F word like an adjective in those days. I was just so angry. And the next day when I woke up and I went to work, the things that would have normally come out of my mouth were caught. It felt to me like when the angry word would want to come out of my mouth, it literally felt to me like there was a hand in the back of my throat grabbing on to those words and not letting them spew out of my mouth. It was so weird. I remember walking around for weeks thinking, this is so crazy. This is so weird. Is this really real? Somebody pinch me. Am I dreaming? That's how dramatic the change in my life was. My friend invited me to church, and I was like, okay, I'll go to church. It was the first time I had set foot in a church in 26 years that had nothing to do with a wedding or a funeral or the occasional Christmas service that I would go to just for nostalgia's sake. And every time the pastor opened his mouth, I heard God speaking to me, saying things to me directly. And I went to a church that likes to do altar calls and ask you to profess publicly that you want to follow Jesus. And at the following Saturday when I went to church with my friend, that's what happened. And we were sitting in the back of the church, a very big church, and I just remember being glued in my seat. My heart was racing, and I was crying because they were calling people to profess Jesus in the front of the sanctuary publicly. And I just remember being stuck in my seat, and I could hear the enemy in my left ear accusing me of all of the horrible things I had done in my life, and saying, you think God's gonna take you back? You're a drunk. You are a bad mother. You're a murderer. You're covered in tattoos. You're this, you're that. It was all hateful, horrible things. And then suddenly, I heard the pastor say, after so many people had gone forward, he was like, I know there's one more person here that needs to come forward. I don't know who you are, and I know that you're here and we're waiting for you. And I just want to say to you, it doesn't matter what you've done, God will take you back. And when he said those words, I was able to rip myself out of that chair and go forward and say yes to Jesus. And that was on November 12th, 2005. That was the day that I officially said, Jesus is my Lord and my Savior, and I will follow him for the rest of my life. And I'm going to stop here for today. And in the next part, I will tell you about all of the amazing things that have transpired in 17 years of my life. And we'll just keep talking about how Jesus changes everything. I hope you'll come back and continue listening to the rest of the story, because it's such a good story. God is so good. God is here. God is real. You can find him if you want to find him. I promise you. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.